could please make your way to the council chamber in order that we may proceed. There are 4 members present. We need 6 more for a quorum. It is 10:14. This is your first quorum call. present. We need 3 for a quorum. This is a second quorum call of the City Council. Council members who are in the building, if you could proceed to the chamber so we may begin. Ms. Chick, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Holden, Mr. Padilla. now 10:25. We still have 7 members present. We need 3 for a quorum. Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Holden, Mr. Padilla, Ms. Chick, if you could please make your way to the chambers. Third quorum call. is 10:30. We have 9 members present. We need 1 for a quorum. Mr. Holt and Mr. Padilla, if you could please make your way. Prior to beginning the council meeting, we do have some presentations, so if we may have your attention, please. Members of the council, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we do have a presentation prior to beginning the council session. At this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco for a presentation. Councilman?
Mr. President, colleagues, I'm going to invite up a student from Multnomah, Zoe Axelrod, who's going to actually be doing the presentation. So let me give her the microphone. You ready, Zoe? Okay, hold on.
Good morning, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zoe Axelrod. On behalf of the students, teachers, parents, and all of the staff at Multnomah Street Elementary School, thank you for your generous support and for the continuation for our cultural enrichment education programs. As a result of Councilman Pacheco's support and the efforts at Multnomah staff and parents, more children at Multnomah Street Elementary School will be able to enjoy the opportunity that we have had to learn creatively. We, the students of Multnomah Street Elementary School, are proud to present to Councilman Pacheco and the City Council of Los Angeles our Rhapsody in Blue art quilt. This quilt was created and designed by the 1st through 5th grade students at Multnomah's Highly Gifted Magnet program during the 1999 through 2000 school year under the guidance and direction of professional art quilter Connie Roman, one of our many volunteer parents. This is only one example of the wonderful learning experiences and opportunities that we have had at Multnomah Street Elementary School. We have given each of you a more detailed description of Rhapsody in Blue and hope that cultural enrichment education programs such as ours will be duplicated at other schools throughout the city of Los Angeles. We have also brought with us today for your enjoyment other examples of our creative learning experiences. These papier-mâché masks were created by Multnomah students through an enrichment program that taught us about our different cultures, helped us to develop our research skills, and to apply art, environmental, scientific, and mathematic concepts. Now, would Principal Roop and Ms. Roman please come forward to present the quilt?
Turn it this way. Okay. Where's Alex Padilla? Who really tall they have to look? Colleagues, the most significant thing about the quilt is that each student was asked to put on paper and then transfer onto the quilt their vision as they listened to Rhapsody in Blue, which I understand is a Gershwin song. Well, I keep thinking of the Miles Davis album Blue, and so this is a reflection of the creativity of the Multnomah students and the ability to shine when given the opportunity and the support of not only us as a council, but generally the staff and the parents who have invested so much time in the gifted program. So thank you so much, and we'll definitely have it in our office in full display for our anyone who comes visit us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, we're going to the back. Mr. President, Zoe has a final comment.
Lastly, please sit back and enjoy one of our latest productions.
we have a song for everyone to enjoy. Are they coming? No. They're going to take a picture. Okay. They need to come back to perform first. Kids, come on back. First our performance, then we'll take pictures. Yeah, you too. Are you all right? All?
Partners, move down. Move down. We're just going to do it in one line. Okay, go. Nice and loud.
Good morning, members of the City Council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henri Wang. This school year, the classes of Miss Lundy, Mrs. Winch, and Mr. Fullerton created and performed the jazz musical We Has Jazz. Throughout the school year, we learned about the historical significance and contributions of America's unique musical art, jazz. We further developed our knowledge and skills in research, writing, social studies, language arts, visual, and performing arts. We are proud to present to you today the opening act. You don't have to know the music to understand the feeling. During the 1920s, there was a changing mood in America. The automobile, the phonograph, the radio changed people's notions of distance, leisure, community, and freedom. What is jazz? It's spirituals, ragtime, blues. It's swing, bebop, hard bop, scat. It's cool jazz, new freedom, fusion, minstrel, and free. Jazz is America's music. Jazz spread like wildfire from New Orleans, up the rivers, through the fields to big cities, from coast to coast and all over the world. We has it. We has jazz. Room 27 would like to present a short excerpt of this enjoyable journey into an exciting musical world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Let's get together.
Jazz is our music, the music of America. From the blue-lit streets of New Orleans up the river to St. Louis. From the gangster clubs of Chicago to the bright lights of Harlem. We made it, and it made us. We didn't always have our freedom, but jazz is freedom. Just think about that. We didn't always have our peace. We didn't always have enough money or shelter, even food to eat. But since that first time worker shook up a song, accompanied only by his pitchfork and the beat of his heart, we has it. We has it, folks. We has jazz.
Mr. Pacheco, and to our students visiting today, on behalf of the City Council, we thank you. Mr. Chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez for a presentation.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, I keep on trying to remind people that as I leave City Hall, I'm not going to miss them because I'm still going to be around. And at the same time, when I say those words, I try very hard not to cry. And it's because you get attached to City Hall, you become part of the City Hall family, and you understand the complexities of the work we have to do and how we have to do it. Many times people don't understand that. But one of the things we do get to do is recognize change and celebrate change, and it's part of what I'm doing today. I'm celebrating change for one of my staff people, someone who's been very important to me. And that's Gladys Lucia Sinek. And this is Gladys. Where's Gladys? Come on up here. As we're all leaving our offices and getting ready to move, we choose to do different things to recognize the contributions of people who work for us. And I had a very special award. And it was a picture that was drawn, a hand-drawn picture of a woman with these butterflies and these children playing in a, what do you call it, teeter-totters? Going back and forth. And it had a plaque recognizing for my work with families and children. And basically I took that pictured frame with a plaque and I gave it to Gladys Sinek. And I asked Gladys to take it with her. The reason I did that is, see, Gladys has served as my executive assistant in my office since 1992. But when I basically got the assignment of being the chair of the ad hoc committee on children, youth, and violence because of a shooting at Fairfax High School. I thought Gladys was ready for some change, and I asked her if she would play the liaison to that committee. And she was my liaison to the Commission on Children, Youth, and Their Families. Her and David Marcus worked hard. But I saw a commitment from her to that assignment, the kind of commitment that you learn to appreciate and to recognize. And so the fact that that commission now exists and its executive directors who've been a part of it and the work that it's done, a lot of it had to do because of Gladys Siddick, and I wanted to recognize her for that, and that's why I gave her that picture. Gladys has 25 years with the city of Los Angeles. I've only been here 9.5. But she started working in 1975 as a clerk typist to Councilmember Don Lorenzen of the 3rd District. In 1976, she went to work with Gil Lindsay as a scheduler, and she was with Mr. Lindsay until he passed away. You need to know that in 1991, Gladys assisted Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas with his office transition. And in 1992, she joined my office. And since then, she's been my executive assistant. Gladys is not going to be leaving the city family. She's going to be joining the Library Commission as their executive assistant, and she'll continue in that area. And so today I have a certificate that's signed by all the council members. Boy, there's less and less of us. As well as myself. And basically it's congratulating Gladys for 25 years of faithful service with Council District 1 and her participation in Council District 3, 8, and 9. And it's basically wishing her best wishes as she faces new challenges in the coming years. She's also joined here by her family, Jeff, who has 25 years with the city, or her husband of 25 years, I shouldn't say with the city. Jeff also happens to work for the Department of Recreation and Parks. Her parents, Jose and Aura Alarcon, her sister Janet, and her mother-in-law, Rosalinda. I made it through without crying, folks, but my emotions were something that I had to hold back. Gladys has been a very special person to me, and so for that, Gladys, again, congratulations on your change, and may you continue to enjoy the fruits of life.
Mr. Ridley Thomas?
Mr. President, members of the council, and to the family and friends of Gladys, I take it as an opportunity of both pride and privilege to stand and to echo the sentiments expressed by Mr. Hernandez. Gladys demonstrated the kind of character, the kind of grace that many of us wish to emulate as a part of the transition staff for CD8 when I was first elected some 10 years ago. In a very short period of time, Gladys distinguished herself. She maintained, even when moving to CD1, a certain kind of poise, dignity, professionalism, and a sense of being grounded that is nothing less than exemplary for city employees in similar positions. Even in the times of adversity, she held her head high and just kept going forward and said, things are a little tough now, but you would never know it by virtue of the way in which she carried herself. Gladys, you have earned our respect and our admiration, and we wish you nothing but all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you so much for your kind words. It's been a rewarding experience for the last 25 years. I've worked in with many different types of constituencies in these council offices, including Council District 8. I want to thank Councilmember Ridley Thomas for giving me that opportunity as well. I wouldn't have had such a great job career had it not been for my friends in the city clerk's office, CLA, the movers, administrative services, everybody, and I'm going to miss all of them. I want to just take a second to read our mission, and this truly exemplifies what my fellow colleagues do on an every day. Our purpose is to ensure Council District 1 constituents receive the best municipal services available, equally distributed and delivered in a timely manner from a City Hall government prepared to listen and respond to the needs of the people. These words were given to us by our boss, Mike, an astute politician, a man of vision, and a person who always helps the needy. So, Mike, thank you so much for letting me be part of your team for the last 10 years. Thank you.
And members of the council, not only is Gladys's family here, her immediate family, but also her staff family. And I know that hiding in the back is a guy named Ed Reyes that you guys will all be hearing a lot of. but they all wanted to be here for Gladys.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, here we go. Okay, would the council please come to order? This is a meeting of the City Council of the City of Los Angeles this Wednesday, June 20th, 2001. I'm Council President Pro Tem Rudy Savornich Jr., serving as presiding officer due to the excused absence of Council President Ruth Galanter. There are 15 council districts in the city, and we are currently being viewed live on LA City View Channel 35. Today's meeting will be repeated at 7:30 this evening, and all meetings of the City Council will be repeated starting Sunday at 10 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Brunson, Fier, Garcetti, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Swarnich, Wex, Walters, Galanter. 11 members present, a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Pacheco moves without objection. Minutes are approved.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Without objection, approved.
Before beginning the regular agenda, there are several items to continue. Item number 3, a request to continue that to June 27th.
Is there any objection to continuing item number 3 until June 27th? Members? Seeing no objection, so ordered.
Item number 33, request to continue that, to refer that to Environment Equality Committee.
Is there any objection, colleagues, of referring item number 33 to the Environmental Quality Committee? Seeing no objection, so ordered.
Item number 51, a request by Councilmember Holden to refer that to committee. He didn't specify a committee, Mr. President, so do you wish to?
Mr. Holden? On item number 51, there's been a request by your office to refer this item to committee. What committee would you prefer, sir?
Correct. We got a new council person coming in. I don't think there's going to be any objection to it, but at least you should have a hearing.
What committee would you like to have it referred to?
The one that's appropriate for Rec and Parks, I guess. Arts and Health.
Arts, Health, and Humanities?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any objection to referring item number 51 to Arts, Health, and Humanities? Okay. No objection, so ordered. Next item.
On the regular agenda, items noticed for public hearing. Item number 1 is a Planning Land Use Management Committee report.
Okay, we have some cards. Let's hold item number 1 on the desk a moment.
And item number 2 is also a required public hearing item.
Let's hold that on the desk also.
Item number 3 has already been acted on, and item number 4 is protest and ordinance. The council should open the hearing and continue the hearing and ordinance to July 11th.
Okay. Hearing on item number 4 is opened. Is there a motion to continue this item until July 11th, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Padilla moves. Is there any objection? So ordered. Next item.
On the regular agenda, items for which public hearings have been held, items 5 through 20. I believe there are cards on item number 6. However, a public hearing was held last week.
Let's hold item number 6 on the desk for a moment. And we have the remainder of the items, which are items number 5 through 20, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. President.
Are there any specials, colleagues, items number 5 through 20? 17 special by Councilwoman Misikowski.
And also, Mr. President, I believe there's a card on item number 16, but that has also had a hearing in committee.
Item 16 we'll call special. Are there any other specials 5 through 20, colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on items 5 through 20 and tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
Those items are approved. At this time, without objection, council members, and with your permission, we would like to recess the regular council meeting for a moment in order that we could take up a request by Councilwoman Misikowski's office that we would consider item number 1 on the special council meeting. So, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on the special council meeting?
Burnson, Schick, Fuhrer, Garcetti, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Warnick, Schwex, Walters, Galanter. 11 members present in the quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have item 1 before us on the special meeting. Members of the council, at this time, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Misikowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, on March 28th, the city received from LAFCO the initial fiscal analysis of a proposal for San Fernando Valley secession. We had also received the applicant's reorganization proposal, and LAFCO had given us a deadline that the city must respond with issues that are raised in those two proposals by no later than July 2nd. The city instructed ORS, the CLA, the city attorney, and all the departments to review the documents submitted and prepare a response, which is before you today. You have a recommendation from the ad hoc committee to adopt the ORS report and the city attorney's report as the official city position. And essentially that position is one of raising questions. It does not take a stand for or against secession. It raises questions about inconsistencies in the various proposals, questions on some various proposals and the viability of those proposals as they might move forward, some questions of legal uncertainties, and areas which need further explanation and exploration. I would like now at this time to turn to Mr. Fujioka and Mr. Fred Merkin in the City Attorney's Office and our ORS to give us the overview of what they did in their review with all the departments and in trying to put together the appropriate questions that the city would forward to LAFCO.
And Councilwoman, I will hold the balance of your time.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President and members of the council, perhaps I can begin. This is Fred Merkin, City Attorney's Office. If I might just put this in some context, picking up where Councilmember Misikowski left off, LAFCO has this proposal before it from Valley Study Foundation, Inc. for the study of and for the special reorganization of the San Fernando Valley as a separate city. And LAFCO has the obligation to prepare a comprehensive fiscal analysis. And to that end, they developed a 7-step procedure for getting there. The first 4 steps primarily concern the gathering of data. In the 5th step, the applicant was required to submit its proposal. We are in the 6th step. Under this process, the city is called upon to respond to the proposal in the 6th step, and in the final step will be the preparation of the comprehensive fiscal analysis by LAFCO and the final plan for special reorganization. We took it as our mission in this context to take a look at the proposal and try to identify any legal issues that presented themselves. And we found a number, and they fall into 3 categories. There are certain legal issues that we think present impediments to implementation of the plan as written. I will give an example of that in just a moment. There are certain other issues that create some legal uncertainties in regard to whether or not the plan could be effectuated. And thirdly, there are some legal issues that need to be taken into account as the plan is ultimately developed and possibly proposed to the electorate. If I might just talk about some of the more significant legal issues that we've identified. The first issue in our report we identify as the question of whether the Right to Vote on Taxes Act, a constitutional amendment adopted in 1996 as Proposition 218, would apply to many of the revenues that otherwise would be assigned to the new city. We have, in some detail, explained that there's tremendous uncertainty in the law as to whether or not that particular constitutional provision would apply to this form of governmental reorganization. There are fair arguments on both sides of the question. When you boil it down, you have this dilemma. You have the fact that the taxes and other charges, for example, assessments, that are currently in place would be precisely the same, at least at the beginning, for those living in the valley. There would not be any tax increase, there would not be a tax decrease. The tax level would be precisely the same. So the question is, well, is this a new tax? The other side of that is, well, it's true that the level of taxation is the same, but the governmental entity receiving the tax is quite different. In fact, it's brand new. So you ask the question, does this require the consent of the electorate? Because Proposition 218 says if you want to impose a general tax, you need a majority vote of the electorate. If you want to impose a two-thirds tax, you need a two-thirds vote of the electorate. Are those votes required, is the question. And you look at the measure, you look at the other materials that were before the voters in 1996, and you don't have much of a clue. In fact, there were two official opinions rendered with regard to whether Proposition 218 applied to annexations. And the Legislative Council of the state of California concluded that Proposition 218 did apply. California Attorney General, a short time later, reached just the opposite conclusion. So where do we come down? We believe that it is enough for us to identify this as presenting a material risk of Proposition 218's application. It's something LAFCO will simply have to take into account. The second issue I'd like to discuss with you is more in the nature of an obstacle, a clear obstacle in our opinion, to the implementation of the plan as presently prepared, presently presented by the applicant. This concerns the question of regional government. Councilmember Mizikowski referred to the initial fiscal analysis that had been prepared by LAFCO back on March 28th. Well, the applicant in its May 14th proposal deviated considerably from the approach taken by LAFCO in proposing that certain centralized functions, in fact, many of the major functions of Los Angeles city government, be taken from the city of Los Angeles and given to newly created regional districts. Under this plan, LAFCO would define these districts, create them, and invest in them the authority of the city of Los Angeles to run water system, the power system, the wastewater system, and certain other centralized functions. The problems we see with this concept begin, first of all, with the conclusion, in our opinion, that LAFCO doesn't have the power, firstly, to create the entities, secondly, to take the powers from the city of Los Angeles, these are municipal powers, and place them with these entities. And even if LAFCO had the authority under statutory law, which they do not have, to do so, it would encroach upon the city's constitutional authority. We have, under the California Constitution, the right to run a municipal utilities. We have the right of municipal home rule, and the proposal that the applicant has prepared would substantially remove this fundamental authority on the part of the city, fundamental responsibility to run the municipal government. So that itself presents a major obstacle. Now, if I would just like to, I'd like to just touch on some of the other issues, if I might. They fall into, I think, a couple of categories. One has to do with the notion of rate setting. Members of the council are quite familiar with the notion of setting rates for water, power, and the wastewater service. Once again, we have this issue of regional government and whether some newly created governmental entities would be performing this function. But I think we, in this report we did, asked the question, what if, in fact, what if this regional governmental concept is not viable? What then? May LAFCO set these rates? And, for example, could LAFCO require that the rates in the valley be precisely the same as the rates in the remaining city? And we reached the conclusion that LAFCO lacks that power. That is a power reserved to the city of Los Angeles. And it's true that we are constrained by the law in regard to our rate setting, but we're not constrained by LAFCO. The setting of these rates would be made by the city of Los Angeles. A couple of other points, and I will talk about them in fairly general terms. One, really, I conclude with 2 points. One concerns the question of service contracts. You may have heard that the proposal is built upon a substantial connection remaining between the city of Los Angeles and the new Valley City. It can be described as an umbilical cord that provides life support to the Valley City, considering the dimensions of these contracts and the lack of any termination, apparent termination to them. The question is, can LAFCO require the city of Los Angeles to enter into contracts? And the short answer to that is no, if only because a contract by its definition is consensual, so it cannot be required. The next question is, if that's the case, then what about requiring service obligations on the part of the city? Well, the state law says that we have this obligation for the balance of the fiscal year in which the incorporation took place, but that's it. We think that certainly any long-term obligation would present serious problems in this regard, as indicating, firstly, that the Valley City would not be viable. Secondly, that this is supposed to be a detachment and an incorporation of the detached territory, that in fact there would not have been a detachment. And thirdly, that this would be a manifest abuse of LAFCO's discretion. The second point that I'd like to talk about concerns the concept of revenue neutrality. You've heard about this in the past because a year ago we were authorized to send a letter on this issue to LAFCO, to LAFCO's attorney, the county counsel's office. Make a long story short on this, it basically says that the city of Los Angeles is not to suffer fiscal harm because of this special reorganization. If in fact the revenues we lose are substantially are not substantially equal to the savings we enjoy, then that difference needs to be made up. There needs to be a mitigation. There are problems with the proposal in this regard. They ask for certain deviations from revenue neutrality. And when you ask the question of the implications of those deviations, you reach the conclusion that it points to the city of Los Angeles running the risk of fiscal harm. And the final point is this, that the analysis that LAFCO has done so far was targeted toward the staffing needs, the resource needs of the Valley City. And that's a legitimate line of analysis under the law because the viability of that city is a very important dimension of their work. But what they have failed to do is to study the service impacts upon the city of Los Angeles. They are statutorily required to do that, and you actually cannot do an appropriate revenue neutrality study without understanding that. So that is another deficiency we point out in the report. There are a number of other issues we address. There is a category of issues at the very end of the report which require further analysis. So we have that before you, and we concur in the committee's recommendation that this form part of the city's response to LAFCO. Thank you.
So, Mr. Merkin, I'll take that you didn't like it,
Like what?
the report?
No, it wasn't a question of like or dislike. It was just that there were some issues.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Merkin. Councilwoman Miskowski, you have some time left.
Thank you. I also believe that Mr. Fujioka just may have some presentation. The bulk of this report, which is about a 900-page report, is actually that was assembled by ORS through Mr. Fujioka and his staff, Ellen Sand, which really contain a lot of detail from a lot of different departments who looked at the analysis from their own perspective and raised some questions. Just one that comes to mind, for instance, was the library department, which talked about the requirement of the building of the libraries that we will do under the bond proposition, but that the analysis contained no requirement or no acknowledgement of the finances it would take to fill a library. So we, in the city of Los Angeles, were the new Valley City to be created, would build the building and the structure under our bonds and then turn it over, but it did not include the capability of fully making full a library with all the necessary ingredients. There are a number of other issues, including employee relations and some questions. But essentially what this is not taking a position, it is raising questions. There are some areas that need clarification. The city staff analysis is a factual and objective analysis, just saying that some things were omitted, some things were inconsistent between the IFA and the applicant's proposal. Some things that LAFCO had criticized the City of LA for using, as you came up with a statistical number that was a half of a body or a half of a percent, we would round it up, and LAFCO said we can't do that, and yet in their own report they did. So there's inconsistencies like that that are just very straightforward, and all this is saying right now is here's questions that need to be answered, come up with either an answer to the question or a different way of modeling a proposal that meets the tests of these questions. And that's the process we're in now. LAFCO gave us the date of July 2nd to respond, and I would move that the council adopt the communication from the chair and vice chair of the ad hoc committee, which incorporate these reports, incorporate all of the work done by our city staffs, which again does not take a position but raises questions that we think need to be legally addressed and factually addressed by LAFCO, and that's their charge.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Prior to our continuing deliberation by council members, I have received a card to speak. Jeff Brain. Go right ahead, sir, and then we'll proceed with council members' comments.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Jeff Brain. I'm president of Valley Vote. And what we are seeking in the Valley and in other parts of Los Angeles is to potentially reorganize Los Angeles into two or more cities, a new Valley City and a smaller, more manageable Los Angeles City. Whether you're from the Valley, Hollywood, the Harbor, East LA, downtown, or West LA, what we're talking about is controlling your own destiny, local control. We believe that if the Valley becomes its own city, that the rest of Los Angeles will reap the same benefits of a more efficient, more responsive government. Now, the LAFCO report came out and said that the Valley as an independent city would be viable and would not harm Los Angeles, that there'd be no need for any increases in taxes, that all the employee jobs would be protected, so would their pensions and their benefits. And again, I emphasize that after the Valley pays to Los Angeles in alimony annually, that there would be no need for taxes, and LA would be not harmed. They would have the same amount of money beforehand. Now, what I want to address is some of the issues that have been raised. The Prop 218 issue, there have been many incorporations since Prop 218 was adopted. This is something that routinely is addressed and will be addressed by LAFCO by allowing in their terms and conditions the public to vote on a provision that continues those taxes. The DWP is an important issue. What we're talking about here are the lives of your residents. And what concerns us the greatest about this report, and you've heard quotes in the paper about this as a declaration of war against the Valley, and that might be a little harsh, but the problem with this report is that it goes through and points out all the negatives, but this is your one opportunity in the LAFCO process to say how the City of LA wants these issues to be handled, and you're not taking advantage of it. Forget that I'm president of Valley Vote. As a resident of Los Angeles, and everybody in this audience should be disappointed that the city is not taking this opportunity to state how you want DWP handled. The early LAFCO report came out and said that to divide it would be the worst thing that had happened. What we have proposed is that DWP stay together and service both cities. We have provided through all the issues a very smooth transition that protects the departments, protects the employees, and protects the residents. So it's a seamless transition. Whether or not LAFCO can unilaterally make those happen might be an issue that remains open. But certainly the City of LA could cooperatively, through discussions, propose that is, whether you agree with secession or not, that is the best way to handle these issues for all your residents, to protect them. Now, ultimately, what we're talking about, you have over 50% of your geographic area of Los Angeles has now petitioned for secession. Ultimately, what we're talking about is if the people in the valley want independence, and as in this report, you're threatening higher water rates or even withholding water from 1.4 million people, if we were talking about a foreign country, we would all be outraged that a government would be taking such tactics. And the same should hold true here in Los Angeles. If, in fact, the people of Los Angeles want to reorganize into smaller cities, then let it happen. And as Nick Pacheco said yesterday, and he was absolutely correct, the thing to do, whether you agree with secession or not, is cooperate, put forth constructive ideas on how to handle these issues so that regardless of what the vote occurs, that it happens in a way that benefits everybody. And so what we ask is let this go forward and let it go to a vote of the public and let the public decide. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The chair recognizes Councilman Burnson.
Yes, members of the council, I just want to respond to a couple things, and I'm going to excuse myself from the vote because I represent the city on LAFCO, and I think it would be appropriate that I do not take part in this vote because I'm going to have to make a decision ultimately on all the reports that come to LAFCO. Let me just clarify a couple of things. First of all the information that was presented on the study were not done by LAFCO, but were done by a agency which was hired by LAFCO to produce that study. That study then resulted in a response which was returned to LAFCO by the vote group, or whatever they call it, I think the independence group. And ultimately what will happen is that the LAFCO board and staff will make a recommendation based upon all the information that we get, challenges such as you've heard, challenges such as you just heard from the other group, and ultimately there will be a proposal that will be crafted by LAFCO, and it will go on the ballot because the qualifying signatures have been made. Now, it's always been my contention this will probably be decided not necessarily by the voters, but by the courts, which our attorneys love because that, on all sides, I'm not speaking about our city attorneys, but attorneys in general, because the court system is the Employment Act for attorneys. And that ultimately is a very critical decision. I would just want everybody to understand that there is a large constituency out there. They cast the majority of the votes in the last election. They essentially elected the last mayor. And so we're not trifling with just a small group of people. This is a very major thing. It isn't just the San Fernando Valley. We have a number of areas of the city that have expressed displeasure and want to set up their own city governments. We have the Harbor area, which you represent, Rudy, and which Ms. Hahn coming in will represent. We have the Hollywood area, which has submitted papers to us. So the city needs to recognize the fact that there are problems. And frankly, I think the attitude the city has taken doesn't do anything to try to keep the city together. I think it's pretty much cast the bacon in the fire, or the fighting words and so forth. I would hope that there would be a little different approach, but so be it. I'm not on that committee for many reasons, but I am on LAFCO. I just want you to know that it will be LAFCO that will make the decision, not the ad hoc committee, not the city council, not vote. LAFCO will prepare a proposal which will go on the ballot. The estimated time is November 2002, and that's the way it is. And the only thing that would prevent that would be a court order, lawsuit or something. I just want everybody to understand what the process is. I think the board of LAFCO will attempt to be very fair. They'll attempt to see that the city is protected, the areas that are seeking self-determination are protected, and that the big question of what is economic neutrality may be a key issue in the discussions that take place. So it's not over, it's just starting. So get ready for it, but I would advise everybody to keep an open mind. And if any of you think that you want to keep the city together, the way to do it is not to declare war. The way to do it is to try to solve some of the problems that these folks have been seeking regress from. So with that, I will, when you get ready to vote, before you open the roll, because I know some other people want to speak, I will leave the room because I don't think it's appropriate for me to vote on this at this time, being as I'm going to have to cast a vote at LAFCO.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco.
Mr. President, colleagues, as a member of the committee, I would first of all respond that it's at least the chair's intention and my intention from our discussions yesterday not to view this as an antagonistic process, but to really flesh out all the issues. And in the debate and discussion of all the issues, some of them are issues that can really basically invoke a passionate response. For example, yesterday we were talking about civil service and the new city's basic responsibilities or how they're going to handle employees. And my passionate response about that it not being our responsibility to have, to force the new city to adopt civil service provisions, that was really their responsibility to step up, wasn't meant as an antagonistic statement in any way. It's just simply that we have to recognize that at some point each side is going to be responsible as caretakers for the residents, the employees of their appropriate cities. And my only goal during this process is to make sure that when the vote is put before the voters, that all the pieces for a successful transition, if approved, are in place. I do not want to be in a situation where the voters have spoken to do something and we have not lined up our ducks, put them in order to make sure that both sides are going to be successful. In no way should we, in any manner, set up a vote and then have gaps or things that are not fully thought out. And so our debates and our discussions should not be interpreted as being antagonistic towards any member of the Valley or the desires of the voters from that area of the city. I have been very upfront about the fact that I don't personally believe in secession, but that I think it's our responsibility ethically to provide a mechanism so that everyone comes out of this as a win-win if the voters choose to move in that direction. I cannot predict what the voters will do, but I can surely assure anyone who's monitoring this that my whole goal is to try to make this a win-win at the end of the day, regardless of the outcome of that vote. So I just want to make it very clear for the record that in no way is this on my part, and from what I've seen on the chair's part, in any way meant to be antagonistic towards that vote.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
I found it interesting that Mr. Bernstein chooses not to vote with the council but vote with LAFCO. He had a choice. And he says, no, he doesn't have a choice. You know, Mr. Bernstein, part of my concerns in this whole discussion that's been ongoing is I started as one city. And not everything is to my liking. But I don't say, give me my ball, I'm going to go play another playground. What basically I have to do is figure out how to solve a problem from a citywide perspective. What's bothersome to me about the current LAFCO study before us is it didn't look at the whole city. It looked at the development of a new city. And that was directed by LAFCO. And that's bothersome, and I think we have to take a position. You see, when I clearly look at zoning in the city of Los Angeles, I understand where most of the industrial zone land is and the commercial zone land is. I also understand where there's a lot of maintenance cost, like for parkland and open land and roads and so forth. And I honestly believe from my oversight, that the more of a bedroom community you have, the higher the maintenance cost. And the more of a mixed-use community you have, and mixed zoning, the lower those costs. And so I know that if succession was to happen in a fair way, my constituents would have many more resources to deal with their issues. But for some reason, this question keeps coming up, and now the formulas are being manipulated in a way to try and make it a fairer way for the Valley. And I think it's important that someone talk on behalf of the inner city. And it's because if someone wanted to succeed from the city, it should be the inner city succeeding from the outskirts of the city. And that's been my position. Because when I came into this council, I started questioning funding formulas that were based on representation that basically was denying an equal amount of funding of resources for the inner city. And all you got to do is ask yourself, where are the parks? All you got to do is ask yourself, where are the schools? All you got to do is find out where people choose to drive the distances to go to work. And you start getting a different perspective. And so the problem we have here is a question of perception and perspective. Now, I've never represented the Valley, and why they feel they're not represented is a mystery to me. Is a mystery to me. Because I'm the one who's questioning, where do all the commissioners come from? Why is the inner city neglected? Why are those major policy committees have that representation, and why does the inner city not? Why isn't there a representative from LATCO from the core of the city, representing the core of the city? It's been because of previous decision makers. It's been because of previous policy makers and the perspective they've had. That's why we have a major zoning difference in our city. But I've always felt that, yes, we should look at ourselves as more than one city, and because that's how our zoning's set up, and figure out how to bring us closer together. Now, I'm sorry, but I did not start this movement. What I have to make sure is that the movement is fair to all the citizens of Los Angeles, and it's not just a one-way street. And I hope you will have that perspective on LAVCO.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
I choose Hernandez's side. Mr. Burnson, I got to ask you a question. No, by what authority, who appointed you to LAVCO? He serves on LAVCO by virtue of the fact that he's a city council person. Now he's going to go over there and reject what we're putting on the table, which is suggestions about and recommendations about and questions that we're raising about the problems that the citizens of the Valley and the inner city ought to be considering before the vote. I know if I lived in the Valley or represented the Valley, they would not be trying to secede because I would have been providing services over and above that which they expected. And that would not have been a problem, Mr. Burnson. Oh, Mr. Burnson said, oh, out of order. He's my, all right, I'm out of order. He's my friend. But I will tell you this, that if I lived in the Valley and I had to, a taxpayer had to vote on whether or not I wanted to separate from the city, I'd really want to know whether or not I could afford to do that. If the city of LA, by virtue of the fact they've been dictated to by LAVCO to invest monies to make a finding as whether or not we could be solvent in the Valley financially, then I want to know that. And that the tax dollars are well spent, the information is accurate before the vote. And then, as a taxpayer, I wouldn't want to pay any more money for a 740 plan that I already have in place, 7-minute response time, 40 minutes proactive internal police service and fire and essential services. I'm already getting that. Why would I spend more money for that? And then I would go to the polls and vote no, no, no. And they say, you voted 3 times. No, I voted once no, and I asked other people to vote no also, and so they voted for me. And therefore, it will be defeated. Mr. Burnson, I think that these are good suggestions. They're not in concrete. You have to take them and review them to the best of your ability, and then vote to support what we are suggesting here, because in the long run, it's going to benefit the people in the Valley. Ms. Hernandez is correct. the major important commission, the harbor even, the airport, DWP, planning, a disproportionate number of those people serving those commissions are on the other side of the hill. Now, I don't know what the makeup is of that LAFCO, whether or not it's representative of the population, ethnic representation of the population in the city of LA. Chances are it's not. You know, and I think that we have to take a look at that to see whether or not the left out, the forgotten, would have a voice on LAFCO. You know, it's like business the way it was in 1929. You got to think about that. And I would hope that that too will change, as the council has, as the state legislature has, as the board of supervisors have. And so, no matter what they come up with, we might have to sue them in court because of lack of representation from all parts of the county serving on LAFCO. And everybody should be really represented. Even San Pedro should be represented.
Those of us from San Pedro, thank you, Mr. Holden. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski. Thank you for making the point, Mr. Holden.
Again, members of the council, this is a group of questions. It is a factual report raising issues, and Mr. Burnson is accurate all the way in terms of that LAFCO now has responsibility to prepare something for a vote of the people. But what they must do under law is to make sure that anything that they put before the voters is clear, is understood, is comprehensive in its fiscal analysis, and it's got to adequately protect the entire city of Los Angeles, both that exists today, that would exist in the future if there were to be a new city and a remainder of the old city. We believe that this hasn't yet done that, and we're not doing it as a declaration of war. We didn't use those words. The leader of Valley Vote did. We believe that this is a dispassionate report, and there is going to be plenty of time for passionate statements and passionate views and passionate taking a stand one way or another. This is not that. This is just saying these are laws, these are how the laws should be looked at, these are questions that are raised. For instance, I found it interesting, Mr. Burnson, and I don't know whether or not you've had a chance to read this, the LAFCO consultants said that a new city can get by with a budget where its reserve fund, with all the unknowns of creating a new city, can be 0.5% of its budget. Now, we know in our city that we strive to keep a 2% reserve, and this year we've gone to 3%, and we are looking at ways to make it higher, and we need to do that. That an economic consultant said a new city with all of the unknowns, all of the things that they're going to have to do in terms of transition costs, that 0.5% as a legitimate reserve fund raises some questions, and I would think that LAFCO and other consultants need to look at that. We certainly raise that questions just because it's not the standard that we know, it's not the standard that we see when we go to New York for bond counsel to determine how good an asset we have in the city. It's issues like that that I think are fair to ask a question and fair for any future voter to know the answer to that question as they are looking at something that they might be called to vote on. That's what this report is filled of. I would very much recommend that members of the council really read the detailed report in addition to the executive summary, because, as I say, this may come up with some suggestions for alternatives. That's what Valley Vote asked for, too. If something doesn't work, what might? And how will it be apportioned? For instance, even if there were an ability to create a regional government over DWP, is that government 50-50, or is that government 1/3, 2/3 in terms of its representation about the population? Questions like that haven't been raised, need to be raised, need to be analyzed, and that is now the responsibility of LAFCO and ultimately the responsibility of every voter in the city of Los Angeles as they look at the answers to those questions to make a very important determination.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Fewer.
Move the question.
Withdraw, Mr. Fewer. Okay. Chair recognizes Councilman Burnson.
Yeah, let me just clarify something. Nate, I think you got the wrong idea, and so did Councilman Hernandez. First of all, the LAFCO board itself has not proposed anything. We are a jury. We are a group that will look at all the evidence, and I think the questions that were posed by the ad hoc committee are appropriate questions. They'll be considered just as the votes petition is considered. I was merely trying to tell you about the process. I represent the city there. I'm the city's I'm the only representative the city's ever had on LAFCO, and essentially, we never had representation on the city until a member of the state legislature carried the legislation for us, because it was basically controlled strictly by the county. So at any rate, I have to be in a neutral position, but I want it made very clear, I'm not advocating breaking up the city, nor am I advocating not giving these people an opportunity. We have to be impartial, and I just want everybody to understand that. But ultimately, when LAFCO board does make a decision and deliberate, they will be taking all the things that Ms. Misikowski and the committee brought before us. They will make a determination whether 1% is an adequate reserve, whether that's a 0.5% is an adequate reserve. They will make a determination about whether employees have to be protected by civil service. They will make a determination about other things such as this. And so I just don't want anybody to get the idea, because of what you hear here, that this is an inner city against the outer city and so forth. This is a decision that involves numerous parts of the city. Hollywood, the harbor, the San Fernando Valley. We don't know what else may petition. I think the city attorney's office has been covering it. I think the suggestions, the questions that have been raised are appropriate questions. They're going to have to be answered. And LAFCO will do their best when they get all the information together to try to come up with a plan which the petitioners, because they did qualify for the ballot. And we have to understand that. The ballot has been qualified. So LAFCO will have to place on the ballot a proposal. And I believe that LAFCO will do their best to put something there that is fair to everybody and protects the people within the city and all parts of the city. And then it'll be up to the voters to make a decision, and maybe ultimately up to the courts. So that's all I have to say. And if you're ready to vote, I'm going to walk out for just a moment, okay?
Not yet, Mr. Burnson. Chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
I want to make a record, and I want everybody to know this to be a fact. I can't think of any better person to be representing us on LAFCO than Mr. Burnson. I mean, if just any confusion about what I said, I want to just clear the record. He's always well-read, well-qualified, knows the subject matter from inside and out, and he's fair. For those of you who watched him serve on the Planning Commission, know that to be a fact. He even represents San Pedro well. So, Mr. Burnson, as you're going to be leaving the room, I feel very confident that when this entire matter comes before your LAFCO, that you will do what's best for the entire city and not show any partiality, notwithstanding, you know where you live and stuff like that. So, I mean, you're not running for re-election, so you don't have an axe to grind. You don't have to try to influence somebody by saying, I'm with you or I'm against you. I know you will do the right thing. And just like Gil Lindsey told you before, I have friends over here and the friends over there, and I always support my friends, even if they're against one another. That went over, didn't it?
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Is there any other council member that wishes to speak on this item? Mr. Burnson, now would be an appropriate time to excuse yourself. Okay. All right. Mr. Fujioka, before we vote.
I wanted to make one last comment, and that was to emphasize the factual nature of our report. It's been characterized as a negative report, but it was our responsibility to provide the facts so that the decision makers, but most importantly, the public who will be impacted by this action has all the facts. And I also wanted to emphasize that one of our guiding principles or tenets that we use in the development of this report was the impact it would have on providing quality and timely services to the citizens in the city of Los Angeles, both the remaining city and the new city. With some of the issues identified primarily by Councilmember Misikowski, I think that the financial structure will result in a deficit which would have service level consequences. And with that, I close. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other council member that wishes to be heard? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on special agenda item number 1? and tabulate the vote.
10 eyes.
That item is approved. Forthwith, Councilwoman Misikowski? Forthwith, okay.
Thank you.
There is no other business before the special council meeting, so we will adjourn the special council meeting and go back to the regular council meeting. Madam Clerk.
On next items on the agenda, items for which public hearings have not been held, items 21 through 53.
Council members, items number 21 through 53 are before us.
I believe there's a card on item number 53.
Yes, we have some cards on item number 53. We'll hold that on the desk.
Mr. President.
Council members, any specials? Mr. Fewer?
Mr. President, I don't have a special. Item 21, however, I don't think it requires a discussion, but I wanted to note that there are 6 ordinances in item 21. I want to move that the report, which is the 7th item, be sent back to the ad hoc committee on tax reform so that we vote on the ordinances.
Is there any objection to that request from Mr.
It's a
Fewer?
report on the issues.
Okay. Seeing no objection, that'll be the order on that part, but we still have item 21, the ordinance is on the desk. Any specials, council members?
Mr. President.
28 and 36 special, Mr. Pacheco?
Mr. President, I was going to call item 44 special simply to move to receive and file it, so if it...
44?
44.
That's a bunch of special events.
E as in Edward.
Is there any objection to receiving and filing 44E?
E as in Ed Reyes.
Okay, 44E is received and filed without objection. Mr. Hernandez, any
Yeah,
specials?
Mr. President, I'd like to ask that 45 be called special so that we could chat a second. I don't know anything about it.
Fine.
And then on 35, I'd like to move B. There's 2 council committee reports, but one concurs with the other. 35B.
Okay. Are there any other specials?
I think I asked for 22, 23, and 24. Is it so stated?
22, 23, and 24.
The clerk was notified.
Special? You want all those special?
Yes.
Okay. Any others? Madam Clerk, what do we have before us?
Item 21, items 25 through 27, 29 through 32, 34, 35, Mr. Hernandez made a motion on item number B, and 37 through 43, and 46 through 50, and then 52.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on those items and tabulate the vote?
10 eyes.
Those items are approved. Next items.
On the continued agenda, items 55 and 56 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Members, we have items number 55 and 56 before us. Do we have any discussion on those items? 55 and 56? I'll give you a moment to take a look at them.
29, 30, and 32 forthwith, please. Mr.
Forthwith
President.
on those items at Mr. Ridley Thomas's
29,
request.
30, and 32.
Those two.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
That's Claire Bartel.
Okay, items 55 and 56 are before us. Madam Clerk, Mr. Pacheco, did you want to be recognized?
Of course I want to be recognized on item
It's nice to see you,
50,
Mr. Pacheco.
55.
55
And
special?
I just wanted to, first of all, commend Mr. Charlin and all the staff at the CRA for delivering the budget prior to the fiscal year starting. I understand that hasn't been done in 6 years or 7 years. Yeah. We want to Councilman Padilla says we should commend the chair of the committee too, so I'll commend the chair of the committee for doing such an outstanding job. Oh. But I think it's significant to recognize our staff when they do such a good job and bring in things in a timely manner that have been historically a problem. This is part of us delivering good services. Also, note to the staff that I know they've been in discussions with some of the project areas on making some budget adjustments, and those I understand are going to happen also. So I just wanted to commend the staff for working very hard for us and thank Mr. Charlin and all the CRA staff members.
Okay, is there any other discussion on item number 55? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on item 55 and tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
That item is approved forthwith, Mr. Pacheco? Forthwith. Okay. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, item number 56 did,
Item number 56 is before us. Any discussion, colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on item number 56 and tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
Forthwith on that item. Next item.
Mr. President, on the group of votes, items 21 through 53, there was an amending motion on item number 27. Do you wish to reconsider that to include the amending motion?
Yes, let's reconsider item number 27. Item 27 is reconsidered and again before us. The amending motion is included. Is there any objection? Okay, let's reopen the vote on item number 27 as amended and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That item is approved.
Forthwith?
Forthwith.
And also, just as a note, items 21, 20, well, item number 21 is an ordinance, and those will be over 1 week.
Correct. Item 57?
Item 57 is also on the continued agenda. Public hearing has not been held.
Okay, is there any person in the audience that wishes to be heard on item number 57? The public hearing is closed. Is there any council member that wishes to be heard on item number 57? Okay, seeing no one that wishes to speak, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on item number 57 and tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
That item is approved.
Forthwith, Mr. President?
Forthwith on 57. Next item.
On the regular agenda, item number 1 was called special. There are cards from the public on the item.
Okay. We do have a few cards on item number 1. We have 4 speakers. I am going to call them all at once. If each of the speakers would please limit their comments to 1 minute each in order that we may proceed, I would appreciate it. If you could please come and line up behind the podium, and then we will proceed from there. Anthony Wayne, Craig Sherman, Albert Jibilian, and R. Rao Bopana. In that order, Mr. Wayne, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Jibilian, and Mr. or Ms. Bopana, doesn't say. Mr. Wayne?
Yes, I thank the council for taking this yet again. A year ago, the property was approved for a 23-foot height exemption and also approved as far back as a house could go as far as a setback is concerned. And we built the house. The house is, we went back to the Plum Committee. The issues regarding this was how far the setback was approved. The setback was approved through an envelope between the 2 homes by Bob Sutton. And what we did then is our setback is significantly farther back than any other house there. Our house, relative to the entire lot, is smaller, and we want to just have the same height on our house and the same advantages on our house as everybody else on the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Mr. Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the council. My first comment relates to the process that has been involved with this coming back to council. This comes back based upon an order of the court so that further evidence is presented as to why this house is set so far back upon this lot. When we were presented an opportunity testify before the Plum Committee, there was no evidence presented, and the opposition was asked to go first to comment upon these supposed findings. There were none. We've been not afforded a reasonable process in which to participate in these findings, and now there's proposed findings that have been drafted as recent as within the last 24 hours. Certainly this council and opponents and neighbors have not had an opportunity to review and comment. We're asking that there be a reasonable continuance for review of the findings and an opportunity to respond thereto. We've provided a handout within 24 hours of any review we could be that was submitted to council today. Apologize for the last minute, but once again, when findings are drafted and only made available within such a small period of time. What the problems with this boils down to is, as the court ordered, that the approval amounts to a special privilege that no other home within the sub-area could ever build under any of the sub-areas. So while there's a granted exception, what you're doing is allowing the largest home the furthest setback, which is an extraordinarily grant of privileges. It's exactly what the court ordered, was infirm about the city's previous decision, and that still holds true today as we're here before council. We urge you to deny this extensive setback in this large of a home.
Mr. Sherman, were you speaking on behalf of Mr. Jibilian and Mr. and Ms. Bopana also?
Yes, that is.
Okay, well, then we will keep their cards as part of the record if you were speaking for them.
Well, then I'd ask that I be yielded their time and finish a couple minutes of my presentation.
Well, then I will recognize them since they filled out the card, sir. Mr. Jibilian?
Good morning, council members. First of all, Mr. Wayne wants parity with his neighbors. He refers to two houses on the block. One is owned by Jerry Buss and the adjacent neighbor. Both those houses are built on two lots. He then refers to my house being 6,500 square feet. However, my house was built before the Big House Ordinance and the Coastal Bluff Specific Plan. In his case, yes, I have the biggest house on a single lot. He proposes to have the biggest house in violation of both those ordinances. The addition of some 30 feet to the rear of his house was granted in public meetings with Mr. Sutton after the public hearings that we all attended, and approved a straight line from the northeast quarter of the adjacent house to his west to Mr. Bopana's house to his east, which from the northwest corner of that house, a straight line, not the envelope that is before you now. So this was done, in my opinion, illegally, behind closed doors, without any findings being in the record, and none provided to me until 4/18 the night before yesterday. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. and Ms. Bopana? Mr. Bopana.
Thank you, sir. The proposed project is next door to our house. The lot owner requested for height exception, citing parity and compatibility. Now he is requesting the city to allow that height exception to extend beyond the adjacent houses. I believe that allowing the house to extend beyond the adjacent houses is neither parity nor compatibility. Thus far, no credible evidence has been presented either by the developer or the city, including the findings by the planning department, on why the height exception should be allowed to extend beyond the straight line connecting the two adjacent properties. However, it appears that a lot of misinformation was used to arrive at wrong conclusions. I wrote and distributed this letter dated June 19th, 2001 to the city clerk and the council members for your consideration. I request you to please review it and deny any extension beyond the straight line connecting the two adjacent houses. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bopana. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Misikowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. This matter was in Plum. It was in Plum over a year ago, and it came to council and was approved. And the project actually began construction. While it was under construction, the lawsuit was brought against the council's action, and the judge asked that it be remanded back to the city council so that there be consideration as to whether or not the findings could be made based on the evidence that was provided. The committee heard another round of testimony, received evidence, visual pictures showing this house consistent with the other houses around it, with the inclusion of the setback, and essentially very, very similar in the height line to the other houses on either side of it. Those were the issues that had been brought forward, and we asked that all of the substantial information that forms the basis of our evidence and findings be made a part of the record, and were made a part of the record at the committee's last hearing. So it was the unanimous recommendation of the committee to find that this project would not have a significant effect on the environment, include all the documents, adopt the findings of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, and approve the exception to this particular specific plan. And that was consistent not only of the three members of the committee, but also with the recommendation of the councilperson of the district.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any other council member that wants to be heard on this item at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on item number 1 and tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
That item is approved. Next item.
Item number 2, there are also cards from the public on the item.
Members of the council, we do have approximately a dozen cards on item number 2. May I have a motion for a 5-minute public hearing? Thank you, Councilwoman.
How long, Rudy?
5. Chair recognizes Councilman-elect Ed Reyes.
Thank you, council members. I know I'm on this side of the podium today, but I think it's very important to understand that this is a law that was written and worked, and it was an effort that the community put together along with Councilmember Gloria Molina, and has been vigilantly taken care of by current Councilman Mike Hernandez. This is an ordinance that was put together by the private sector, investors, in a real strong attempt to try to create a sense of balance, but not only balance, but establish access, a sense of equity for the people who actually live there and the people who live there today. So all we're asking to support the Plum Report, to support this ordinance, and to demonstrate to the people here and the people watching that this is a very important step in defining that sense of respect and that sense of inclusionary status of folks regardless of their income, because that is what's going to make our city healthy in the future. If we can pull this off, if we can continue to be vigilant and try to maintain a standard of equity, I can see us duplicating this in a manner in which predictability and a sense of balance and comfort between the different investors can continue in these areas that are strategically located to the center of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman-elect. John Bowman.
Good morning, members of the City Council. My name is John Bowman. I represent G.H. Palmer Associates, the applicant, appellant, and property owner in this case. This case involves an innovative mixed-use project known as the Visconti Project, which would provide 300 market-rate housing units, ground floor retail uses, and open space within walking distance of major employment centers in the downtown area. The project site is currently a vacant warehouse, therefore the project will not involve the loss or demolition of any existing housing units and will not in any way create a need for affordable housing. On the contrary, this project will provide an additional 300 housing units in an area that currently has a shortage of housing and suffers from an extreme imbalance, jobs housing imbalance. Now, the project site is located within the Central City West specific plan area. The primary issue presented in our appeal is the application of Section 11C of that specific plan, which, as interpreted by city staff, would require a developer to set aside or reserve 15% of those units for low-income households, basically restrict the rent levels so that they would be affordable for low-income households. It is and has been our position all along that that particular provision of the specific plan does not apply to this project because the planning director has not and cannot make the findings required by state law. Nonetheless, because staff disagreed with us on that issue, my client was forced to seek a specific plan exception. It is that exception that's before you today. This matter was heard in the Plum Committee yesterday. At that time, we asked the committee to table this matter, to continue the matter, to give us time to continue to work through some of the very serious issues that we presented, to work through those issues with staff and with the city attorney's office. And unfortunately, in what we perceive to be a rush to judgment, the Plum Committee turned its back on this project and recommended denial of the exception. As we understand it, the Plum Committee's decision was based on the desire to uphold the 15% inclusionary requirement. But keep in mind, this is a requirement that has been a complete and utter failure in terms of generating affordable housing. In fact, it has not produced, to our knowledge, a single unit of affordable housing that was not heavily subsidized with public funding or which did not receive major exceptions from the specific plan. Clearly, there's a need for additional affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles, but in our view, the answer to that problem is not a feel-good measure that improperly and ineffectively seeks to shift that burden to private developers. What we are asking is simply more time. We ask that the council refer this matter back to committee. Let us continue to work with staff, with the incoming councilman, and with the new city council so that we can, in fact, achieve a project that will benefit the area. I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, sir, very much. Maria Rodriguez? Maria Rodriguez?
Aquí. Mi nombre es María Rodríguez. Soy miembro de la organización ACOR y pertenezco al área de Bixel y Maryland. Y estoy aquí para expresar que hay mucha necesidad de viviendas.
My name is Maria Rodriguez, and I belong to the group ACORN, and I live in the area of Bixel. And I want you to know that there is a great need in my area of affordable housing.
Y estábamos aquí para pedir que por favor hagan algo. Hay mucha necesidad de viviendas de bajos recursos.
And we're here to ask you to please help us. We are in a great need of affordable, low-income housing in our area.
El hecho de que seamos personas de muy humildes, eso no quiere decir que no tengamos el derecho de vivir dignamente.
The fact that we are very poor people does not mean that we don't have the right to live in dignity.
Ay, perdón, no sé qué decir.
She's nervous. Tome su tiempo.
Sí, gracias. Bueno, y también es porque yo hablo por las maneras en la situación que vivimos tan deplorables.
And I'd also like to make mention of the living conditions, which are deplorable.
Creo que es todo. Gracias.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have gone a little over the time. We will make the rest of the cards part of the file this morning. I'd like to thank those who came to the council to testify on item number 2 for being here. At this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Mr. President, members of the council, I basically am asking that we approve the Plum Committee's report, which basically denied the appeal of the developer and granted the appeal of Acorn and Rod Fields. And members, as a representative of the majority of the Central City West area, what you need to know is housing has been built as part of the development project of the Central City Studios. That developer came in and understood that it was a commercial development and they needed to comply with their low-income affordable housing provision of the Central City West plan, and that's what they did. When this plan was put together, and again, it was under the auspices of Councilmember Molina at the time, there were findings that dealt with the need of housing in that particular area and the reality of mixed economies. As you look at the skyline in downtown LA, the reality is we're finding now that the activities that's happening downtown is creating much greater demand for housing. But at the same time, that same activity requires housing for people who aren't earning the kinds of wages of the people who work in the skyscrapers, but the kinds of wages that the people who maintain the skyscrapers are earning. And that's why the Central City West took those things into account. And when we're talking about inclusionary housing, we're not talking about 100% low-income housing. We're talking about 15% of the project. And the developer was asking for an exemption of that provision so that he could have 100% market rate housing. The kind of housing that would not allow the speaker who was before you just recently to live in, even though she currently lives a block away. And so to me, the Central City West plan basically has been the future of Los Angeles. And what you need to understand is some people will try and describe it as a taking, but basically the courts have ruled just recently on a file date of June 6th that an ordinance Napa substantially advanced the legitimate state interests. It does not result in a taking. both the California Supreme Court and the state legislature has recognized that creating affordable housing for low and moderate income families was a legitimate government purpose. See, this specific plan doesn't just apply to this development, it applies to all development. It's a comprehensive approach with dealing with the housing needs of the city of Los Angeles. And I think that what we have before us today is a challenge to that concept. And for that, I believe that basically the Planning Commission erred in granting that exception, because they do not set the policy for this city. It's this council who does that. And we set a policy when we approve the specific plan that has been in place. And so again, I urge you to adopt the Plum Committee's recommendation at this time.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco.
Mr. President, colleagues, it's not very often that I actually listen to a public speaker and get offended by what they say, but the representative from Palmer actually offended me today by saying something that I couldn't believe I heard it, but he said that we're trying to shift the burden to private developers to provide affordable housing. And it's exactly that type of attitude about affordable housing that basically puts all developers in a bad light. Because we know there are community-based developers and actually good developers who want to build affordable housing and see that as a part of their responsibility. But to actually say to the city council that it's not their burden to give back, to be a part of the community, to take into consideration the community needs, which is affordable housing, really I find offensive. This is not about doing something that feels good, because if anyone knows me, I am not a person who simply does feel good legislation or actions. This is about taking care of those in the city who have been historically left out, who have been historically ignored. It's not a policy that should be taken lightly, and it's unfortunate that the representative said it's been a failure. Because if it's been a failure, it's because of the fact that private developers have consistently seen this as not their problem and not their burden. So I am definitely going to support the Plum Committee recommendation. I believe that when a specific plan is developed for an area, that is a plan that has been designed by that community to deal with their community needs, and this plan needs our support. I also wanted to share with you that in the future, and I shared this with the representative from Acorn, we should talk about other mechanisms of enforcement for commitments in regards to affordable housing, like maybe holding up their certificate of occupancy or their temporary certificate of occupancies at their sites if they're going to promise to do off-site affordable housing. It's something that we've done before, something that was done in a project that I worked very hard opposing, but that the council, when they looked at the pedestrian safety issues that I was concerned about, said, we will hold up their certificate of occupancy. They will not get even a temporary certificate of occupancy until the pedestrian safety mitigations are in place. Well, there's no reason why we can't use the same tool in the event in the future project we get a commitment for affordable housing off-site, that we hold up the certificate of occupancy or any temporary certificate of occupancy for the primary site. But I do support the Plum Committee report.
Thank you, Councilman. Prior to calling on the next council member, we have a letter from former councilwoman and current Assembly member Jackie Goldberg. Her representative is here, and we will submit this as part of the record, and I'd like to thank him for being here. Chair recognizes Councilman Garcetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues and members of the public, this is really a defining moment in how we look at housing in this city. And just a few weeks ago, I was out campaigning, going door to door and talking to the citizens of this city, the residents of this city. And if we cannot begin to chip away, if we cannot begin to put a just agenda forward in dealing with housing in this city, we will not only lose the right to do any sorts of developments, we will also lose the sort of city that we all want and need to have. We spend less and do less on housing in this city than any other major city in the United States. We spend about half of what San Francisco does, 2/3 of what New York does, and we need here to not only discuss today what this is, but the beginning of where we move next. Jobs, housing, and transportation must go together. And this is not a burden. Developers should look at this as any good citizen will. That all of us working together to create the sort of city that we want, the sort of fabric where we live together, not where we give a renaissance to an area by moving out those that are there. That is the vision that we need to have in all the development. I welcome developers into that. We can do that hand in hand. We can do it in a just way. We can do it with a conscience. This is the price of doing business in Los Angeles right now. And for a lot of people, they say, forget it. This is inconsistent. This is going to have certain areas of the city where nobody is going to want to develop. Well, let's take care of that inconsistency. Let's take care of that inconsistency by making sure in the future that we implement this citywide. Because of the June 6th finding by the First District Court of Appeals that Councilmember Hernandez spoke about, it does allow us to do an inclusionary housing ordinance citywide. And this is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of it. So thank you to my brothers and sisters here from Acorn, my fellow members. Buenos días. A mis amigos de Acorn. And I fully support the committee's recommendation, and let's go forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Also, for the record, we have a letter from Supervisor Gloria Molina that we will submit as part of the file. Chair recognizes Councilman Fewer.
To move the previous question.
Councilwoman Miskowski, you're the next speaker. Any objection? Okay. All right. So the item is now before us. Item number 2, seeing no other council member that wishes to speak. Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on item number 2 and tabulate the vote?
10 ayes.
That item is approved. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President?
Mr. Fuhrer.
Could I ask?
Mr.
Could I ask that we take item 53 out of order, please?
We will take sergeants. We will take 53 in one moment. I've been informed by the clerk that we have a special one on the desk that needs to be acted, and then we will go to 53. We'll send 2 forthwith. Okay, let's have the findings on special 1. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. President, members, this is a motion introduced by Councilman Holden, and the purpose of the motion is to establish a transition trust fund account for City Attorney-elect Delgadillo to receive donations in the amount up to $150,000. In order for the council to consider Councilman Holden's motion, there needs to be a finding made that pursuant to the rule number 23 of the City Council and the Government Code that there is a need to take immediate action on this matter, and that the need for action came to the attention of the City Council subsequent to the posting of today's council agenda.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Sergeants, can you help me preserve some decorum? I'm having a difficult time hearing staff. Okay, we do have the findings before us. Is there any council member that wishes to be heard on the findings? If not, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on the findings? Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
The item is before us. Anyone wishing to discuss the item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll and tabulate the vote?
10 ayes.
That item is approved forthwith. Okay, we now have a request to take item 53 out of order. Is there any council member that objects to take item 53 out of order?
Is it a long discussion? Or? Oh, no.
Well, that all depends if you push your button, Mr. Holden.
Mr. President, I would move
just before
a 10-minute public hearing.
No, we haven't moved it to take it out of order yet because I've got to leave early.
Well,
and I got item 22, 23.
Colleagues, just to let you know, we are going to lose a quorum at 12:30 no matter what. And we have quite a few items on the agenda. For those persons in the audience who have filled out cards for item number 6, a public hearing, or numerous public hearings have been held, and there would have to be a vote on the council whether or not to reopen a hearing on item 6. So if you're here from item 6, we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. It may be heard today, it may have to be continued. In regards to the other cards, we have a card on 16. We may not get that today. And we also have this item 53 plus all of the other specials that are on the board behind me.
Yeah, Mr. President, my questions have been asked on item 45, so you could remove it from the list.
Okay, so,
It could be removed from the list and just voted on.
okay, why don't we just vote on those real quick, and then we'll go, then we'll see which way we want to go. So we have items 17 and 45 before us. Is there any council member that wishes to speak on those two items? First, Madam Clerk, open the roll on item number 17 and tabulate the vote. That's 17.
10 eyes.
That item is approved. Next item is item number forthwith on that item. Next item is item number 45. Any council member that wishes to be heard on item 45? Going once, twice? Madam Clerk, open the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 eyes.
That item is approved forthwith. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, on that item. Okay.
Committee, we've had a request to have another hearing in Plum. I don't think there would be an objection to that.
Okay, item number 16. Have we acted on that yet?
No, it was called.
Is that called special?
Yeah.
Okay, that had a card. Item number 16 back to committee. And so, Ms. Leward, you had requested to speak. This item is going to back to committee. I will give the card to the clerk to inform you when that will be heard in committee. Okay, so now here we are, Mr. Fuhr.
Well, Mr. President, we only have about 12 or 13 more minutes left in the meeting, I guess, today. So, Mr. Lee Thomas, how long a public hearing on 53 makes sense? Mark, it's your item. Somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes at most,
Yes.
but we're not going to do it. What about a 7-minute hearing, 8-minute hearing, something like that?
I think we can take care of it, Mr. President.
Okay, what we will do is move a 5-minute public hearing. 7, give me a number.
And counting.
Okay.
Proceed.
About 3 minutes on each side.
Okay, let's do a 3-minute on each side, total of 6-minute public hearing. Is there any objection, council members, to that request? Okay, so here we go. Item number 53. I will ask 3 proponents and 3 opponents to testify. If you could please keep your comments to 1 minute each so we can proceed. Let me ask the opponents if they could please choose among themselves the 3 individuals that want to speak. That'll make things easy. And then for the proponents to do the same, and that would make it rather easy. And then as you step up to the microphone, 3 on each side, please, 1 minute each, to identify yourselves for the clerk so we can get your name out of the stack. Sir, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm Darrell Clark, co-chair of Friends for Expo Transit, and we will fit within 3 minutes. We've quickly become LA's largest all-volunteer transit advocacy group with the outpouring of support for Exposition Light Rail. We talk about all of the important places it goes: West Side jobs, downtown jobs, Staples Center, Trade Tech College, Santa Monica College, the beach. We talk about the over 800,000 people who live within 2 miles of this line, the 12th largest city in the United States, and the connection it will provide to and from the West Side to the rest of LA's rail network. Ridership, 51,400. We need the capacity of light rail in this corridor, an alternative to traffic, world record traffic for drivers, a better, faster ride for bus riders. And I want to note that this resolution talks about outreach and proper mitigation for the project. And next.
My name is Joyce Perkins. I'm the chairperson for the Economic Development Council for the 8th District Empowerment Congress, and I'm here to speak in favor of the resolution and would like to read into the record briefly a letter that was sent to the MTA board from the Economic Development Council. We are members of the Economic Development Council, an entity of the City of Los Angeles 8th District Empowerment Congress. The EDC provides a forum for community participation and accountability on economic development projects and land use issues within the 8th Council District. We have closely monitored the MTA's study of public transit along the Exposition right-of-way and have carefully reviewed the Mid-City West Side Transit Corridor Draft EIS-EIR. In addition, we've polled local residents, stakeholders for their perspective on the proposed project. In fact, we hosted an open community meeting earlier this month to discuss the potential benefits and impacts of a dedicated light rail or busway along the Expedition Corridor. Over 50 community members attended the meeting. The meeting comprised a good cross-section of our community. Attendees included residents adjacent or within close proximity of the right-of-way, 8th District Empowerment Congress members, members of Friends for Expo, and other interested parties. Both the MTA's David Meager and Terry Hayes and Friends for Expo Transit, Darrell Clark, Presley Burrows, gave exhaustive presentations. We held a question and answer period and a straw poll, and the results of the poll were as follows. The overwhelming majority of that general agreed that in general traffic and congestion in our community was a problem and expected the problem to worsen. The overwhelming majority, all but 3, agreed that light rail would be the preferred transportation alternative along the right-of-way. Nobody voted in favor of the busway. And when the 3 dissenting community members were asked what alternative use they preferred along the right-of-way, they changed their opposing position in favor of light rail, provided that the Crenshaw area received mitigation measures comparable to those being considered in other cities and other areas located along the right-of-way, and that residents and homeowners located along the right-of-way are dealt with fairly, especially in cases where eminent domain may be necessary. After taking into account all the perspectives, we recommend that the MTA board support the Exposition right-of-way, and we recommend that this council support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That expires the 3 minutes on that side. We'd like to thank all those individuals on this side of the issue for being here this morning. The cards will be made part of the file. In regards to the other individuals that we wish to speak, Madam Clerk, would you reset the timer to 3 minutes? Wanda Solomon. Oh, in fact, why don't you announce yourself since I asked that, sir?
Yes.
Your name? Were you going to speak first?
Yeah. My name is Manuel Criollo. I'm an organizer with the Labor Community Strategy Center and the Bus Riders Union. The Bus Riders Union is a dues-paying, multiracial civil rights community organization, and we are also the legal class representatives of over 450,000 bus riders. After bringing a class action lawsuit against the MTA for the separate and unequal transportation system under the enforcement of Title VI. In '96, the MTA was forced to sign a consent decree with the Bus Riders Union to basically, on the basic premise, to prioritize the needs of the transit dependent, to reduce overcrowding, to reduce fares, and to create new service. We are here today to urge you to oppose and reject the support for the Exposition Light Rail on the basis of supporting the enforcement of civil rights. The MTA is currently in the violation of the enforcement of civil rights of 90% of their clientele, the bus riders. Just over a month ago, the current MTA board introduced a legal brief to annul and terminate the consent decree, arguing in favor of the weakening of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We hope you don't want to be on that side. The same board that right now is willing to circumvent the power of federal courts, circumvent and weaken consent decrees. What will that mean for the city and the LAPD if the MTA is allowed to get rid of their thing? We urge you today to reject the recommendation for the Exposition Line Rail. Mr. Riley Thomas, think about right now, they're talking about a subsidy of $11 to attract new riders for this Exposition Light Rail, while at the same time, the people who ride the Vermont bus with 40 to 45 people standing up have a subsidy of $30 to $1.39. Now tell me if that's equal. So thank you very much.
Okay, next speaker was?
Go to the other microphone. Go, excuse me.
Hello. My name is Cecilia Nunez, and I'm with Neighbors for an Improved Community. We're not really opposing the Exposition line, but we are opposing the part that was added to afterwards, which is the non-connector line that runs from Hill Street or to Long Beach Boulevard. Mostly from Main Street to Long Beach Boulevard is what we're concerned about. This non-connector line runs right through the middle of people's backyards. It's not even half a block away from 28th Street School. And we're quite upset because there's been no outreach, no notification of this project to anyone east of Main Street since the inception of this project. We've had no due process of law, and this totally violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which mandates that public projects using federal monies have early and meaningful public participation in the decision-making process, especially participation of low-income and minority populations.
Thank you, ma'am.
The only involvement has been on the west side from the very beginning. Environmental studies are incomplete with regard to our community. Thorough studies have not been made on the effects of noise and vibration, on
Thank you, ma'am.
impacts. I only have a few more minutes, a little bit.
Well, I don't. I'm going to lose a quorum. Yeah, the time is up. Ma'am, I need you to fill out a card. Ma'am, I've already expired the 3 minutes on each side. Yeah, I apologize.
We have
Thank you,
over
ma'am.
1,600
I appreciate it, and if you'd like to give that to the sergeant as part of the record,
Well, they
I
can
would
look at them and
appreciate it.
submit 'em.
Ma'am, I also need you to fill out a speaker's card. Okay? Did you turn it into the sergeant? Well, it didn't make its way up here. So if you could fill out another one and give it to this sergeant, I would appreciate it. Okay? At this time, the public hearing is closed. The chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
Mr. President and members, for the same reason the lady expressed her opposition to this motion was the fact that she did not have an opportunity to participate in the whole process. I've already supported the exposition right away going back 20 years ago or more, and I do not. But I don't want to go forward with this idea or concept at this time. In fact, I was visited in my office by people supporting the exposition right away. And I said, yes, I still support it. But as I've had the opportunity as a member of LACTC and MTA, and certainly as a council person, to hear arguments from the west side of the exposition right away as to what they would like to have, whether cut and cover, grade separation, up above, below grade. But I live within 2 houses of the right-of-way, and I still support it. However, there may be my neighbors living there and people down the street in my area and in Mark's area certainly would take a different view of that. And we have to have some assurance that once you go before MTA, that you're saying, yes, we support the exposition right away with certain conditions. How you plan to mitigate the noise, vibration, etc. And I don't think that's been done. For that reason, I don't think that we should, I'm not going to vote to go on record in support of exposition right away unless and until such time that we suggest with it that they have a plan to mitigate the noise or whatever inconvenience to be brought to that community, to the community which I represent and live, as they have on the west side of the district where they talk about grade separation. No. I don't think we're ready for that. I don't think MTA is ready for it. And even though we put it on the table, they're not likely to concur. I think if you're asking for federal money, so ask for the money under conditions that once it's provided that these adverse conditions will be in fact mitigated. But that's something in this motion ought to be saying that, Mr. Thomas. Maybe you're going to help me.
More than glad to help you, Mr.
Chair
Holden.
recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Mr. Holden's points are certainly appropriate and are assumed in the motion that is before us. If there's a desire to explicate those points, I'd be more than glad to second them, because I do not see them as being in any way at variance with the thrust of what we are attempting to accomplish here by way of supporting the staff recommendation of those who work at the MTA who have once again determined that this is an appropriate way to facilitate public transit. And I want to hasten to make the point, in my view, this is not an either-or proposition. This is not light rail or bus transportation. It is clear to many of us who are representatives of those who are transit-dependent riders that there's a need for bus service, and I think the prioritization that has been called for by the consent decree ought to be respected. This does not vitiate that in any way. So, members of the council, pursuant to that which you have heard, I want to make note of the fact that the Miracle Mile Association has submitted several letters in support of this resolution. We thank the speakers who came forward to do the same and want to acknowledge the hard work that those who have formed a coalition around this issue for their work, and wish to ask for a unanimous vote of the same, and the recommendations or the friendly amendments made by Mr. Holden would be included in the motion as well. Mr. President, with that, I'm prepared to conclude and ask if we are ready for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas. Chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Members, I rise to make, again, some statements in this area because I think, one, I'm supportive of the motion, but I think that we, as Angelenos, have to recognize something. I just came back from a conference in Boston, and the Big Dig is a project that has spent $17 billion to basically put a freeway underneath that city. 1.7 miles. $17 billion, federally funded. With a transit system that was established in the 1920s, whether it be their green line, their orange line, their blue line, subway system complemented by a light rail system and a bus system. A subway system that is used by all riders. Now, what's happening to us today is the reality of Los Angeles, and that is that gas prices are going up, but the subsidy for rail, the subsidy for buses, the subsidy for our public transportation system is running out. We're running out of Prop C money. And now you have the interest colliding and fighting. You see, I recognize the need for public transportation, whether it be a bus system or a light rail system. But I think that we as elected officials, as we start promoting these additional avenues of transportation, are going to have to deal with the reality of finding the funding. I don't believe we get our fair share from Washington. I think that has clearly been established. We're now beginning to get our fair share from the state, but our local match has to be there. And so unless we start talking about an initiative to continue the gasoline tax and the sales tax to support our public transportation system, we're never going to be able to deal with the realities of bus riders and light rail riders. I mean, we're not going to be able to deal with that. And we know we need both. And we know we need to get people out of their cars. I mean, I was talking about an automobile appreciation tax. Every time someone buys a car, they should basically pay for public transit. Not just the gasoline they use, but by the fact that they've bought another vehicle to use more gasoline. And so from my perspective, I'm supporting this motion because I think it's the study phase, and it's going to continue to define the fact that gridlock and traffic and automobile accidents and bus accidents are a reality of our region. But we need to start also working on the funding mechanisms because we have to deal with both. And it doesn't just happen by us saying, let's support another light rail system. It happens by us now beginning to tell people the reality is we need more money to make it happen.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
I move the previous question on the entire matter.
Okay, is there any objection to the previous question? Well, Mr. Holden objects, so we'll have to vote. Madam Clerk, would you open the roll on the previous question? Tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 3 noes.
Fails. Chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
I'll make it very brief. because I have to leave also. In fact, that Mr. Thomas, on this motion, it talks about that the draft identification tree alternatives, the bus rapid transit down Wilshire Boulevard, that's included in your motion. It acknowledges the fact that MTA is taking a position on the 1, 2, and 3, and the 3 is being the light rail down Exposition. But it also talks about BRT down Wilshire Boulevard. And this body took a position in opposition to a bus rapid transit system down Wilshire Boulevard for good reasons. Now, by acknowledging that this is the MTA's position and included in the body of your motion, does it suggest that we now offset that position that we have taken?
No. No, it's essentially a recapitulation of the action taken by the MTA. It does not in any way contradict the previous action this body took.
All right, did it also suggest that anytime we're using federal funds for whatever purpose, bus or light rail, or we have to work with the people in the community? I think
Clearly.
That's
Clearly.
I didn't hear you.
Clearly.
Okay.
All right.
Is there any other council member that wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll? Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Item is approved.
Forthwith, Mr. President.
Mr. Hernandez? Okay. Mr. Hernandez, we have lost a quorum in regards to item 19. Can we do it Friday?
I mean,
Can we reconsider it and continue it a day?
you can't do anything.
Quorum,
really.
Mr. President.
Can't do anything, Mr. Hernandez.
Well, no, I think it,
We lose,
I'll ask the city attorney for guidance on that ordinance.
We're just going to have to bring in another ordinance and put it on the agenda.
Excuse me, can't we ask for reconsideration on the following day,
The
Friday?
next legislative day.
Today is the following day.
No, today was the follow, it was a reconsideration of an item from
yesterday's
yesterday.
we've lost a quorum.
This is 2020.
I'm sorry.
So items that are currently on the board, 6, 22, 23, 24, 28, 36, 54, A, B, C, and 58 will be continued to Friday's agenda. Are there any adjourning motions?
What was it?
Seeing no adjourning motions? We do have adjourning motions.
And we have to do a new ordinance for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have an adjourning motion, and we may do that prior to adjourning because of a lack of a quorum. Chair recognizes Councilman Garcetti.
Thank you. I'm new around here, and this is my first adjourning motion, and I know they're traditionally done about people that you know. But I'd just like to adjourn in the memory of an unnamed, Guadalupe Solis, a 15-year-old girl who was shot dead in Silver Lake in the 13th District yesterday. You probably read about it in the LA Times. You may not know. We probably don't. Many of us know the circumstances behind it. But in her memory, as somebody caught up in the continuing violence that engulfs the youth of this city, I'd like to adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Councilman.
Gang-
Any other adjourning motions? Councilwoman?
I think the council, I'd like to ask the council to adjourn in the memory of the State Supreme Court Justice Stanley Mosk. We just read also in the paper today, he was a stellar member of the bench in this state for many, many years.
Absolutely.
Any other adjourning motions? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on the adjourning motions?
Jimmy Harmon was right about those games.
Due to a lack of a quorum, the council is adjourned.